before we move on, I'm going to duplicate the template so that we can have a backup. Usually, I'll just name it with the current date. Now, let's begin. Since I downloaded from web, I have to enable editing before I do anything. The first thing I'm doing is referencing. Here you see me using the rows function to generate a sequence. The reference will be the key to link up to the double entry. Here for the invoice date, I'm filling it with green to indicate a required entry field. Here I bring up the conditional formatting under the formula box. I select the first cell under invoice number column. Then I apply to the cells on the right of that cell. Now, whenever the invoice date is filled, the required cells turn green. Now I'm changing the reference column formula so that it will return a reference only when invoice date is filled in. I don't want false here, so I'll make the change here. Let me type a date. Then select first invoice date cell and add a data validation. Allow text length to be equal to 10. Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V to copy everything about the cell including validation. Here I test with a shorter date and the warning works. The invoice number is generated only when invoice date is filled in. These generated invoice number have to be tagged to the actual voucher to facilitate better data linking. Now I create the vendor tab. And then go back to the vendor invoice. Here, I simply copy everything. Go to the vendor tab, Ctrl+V to paste it. I need to add vendor to the table summary. Remember, the table name must match with the tab. Now you can type the English description of the vendor list and the other language as well. Let me change the first column to ref. Simply copy the whole vendor invoice table, get back to vendor list, and paste a table here. Usually, I'll paste only the value, select everything, and Ctrl+T to create a table. Under table design, just pick whatever style you like. Now, go back to the vendor invoice. Select the column description and Ctrl+C to copy. And get back to vendor list. Right-click and paste by formula. Now, we manually type. Alright, let me clear the table first and continue typing the column heads. In the vendor list, we create a sequential reference like what we did in vendor invoice. We must fill in the vendor name, so we highlight the whole column and Ctrl+1 to edit the cell format. Fill them with green for the required entry field. Here I just put in some dummy vendors. Then I move to the first approval date. Alt-O-D to create conditional formatting. Use a formula to create new rules. Here, I select the first vendor name, press F4 twice to unlock the row, and not equal blank, so that when vendor name is filled, these cells will turn green. Let me change the font also. Under Applies to, I'll select the columns that I want them to be green. Once you hit Apply, you'll see cells turn green for rows that have vendor name filled in. Now let me quickly put in some dummy vendor information. Here, we'll create a formula for the vendor display name. We are indexing to the whole table, comma, and then match the individual reference to the whole reference column. Then 0 to indicate exact match, comma, close the bracket, and then match the language code to the table's column heads. 0, exact match again, close all the brackets. I forgot to append the reference, so I go back to the formula. If vendor name is blank, then returns a dash. Otherwise, paste the index match part that we did before and add the reference in front. Remember to join with the and sign. Seems like we need a space in between. Let's do it here. I think a spike is more clear. Let's change it. Alright.